The Woe of Roanoke by Matthew Horton. Book 2. The Chronicle of Thomas Hume. The solemn scribe saw Thomas Hume, stood slow and strode the room. A thunderous crack didn't change his tack, and his face was a mask of doom. 10 whole years, 500 men, that dismal decade should have ended then. Think of all those lives not saved when you were not the vampire's slave. Innocent play upon the shore, with friends abound, and then no more, because of grizzled finds of gore. Then my boyhood shrivelled and ceased, when I was shielded from the beast. In solitary isolation, no playmate to grace my station. A little hell, Hotel Stranreer, sick at night from all the fear, stiff with fright for year upon year. What other suffers might it bring, this spectral wicked winged thing? But what was worse was my seclusion, worse than all demon delusion. Lonely, only hotel guests would spare a word before their quests. It came to this, I'd face the fate if I could just play with a mate. One nightmare night when I 14, I woke to find a nightmare scene. The sky was bright from flame of torch, and piercing it was spear and fork. The sheriff, with a punk band baying, accused my father of the slaying, told him of the evidence, then built a gallows from our fence. We had bored 6 English types, 1 a lord and 4 were knights, and the dandies from the south had signed the hotel logbook out. I screamed to Jesus, pray it stop! The hangman was a man of frock. The noose was tightened by the parson, a forced recluse, now half an orphan. I held his feet so he could save a final word before his grave. Thomas Hume, I've groomed thee strong, so go, my son, and right the wrong. Seek you the truth, and with the proof, proclaim our name with pride again. So I'm not scared, and my nerves are not frayed. The emotion is hate that's been displayed. And I'll pity you not, foul Agnes the Black, for you could have told to turn the tide back. Ostracized, and while we mourned, pains were broken, paint adorned, mother scorned, as are other owners of taverns who had hosted rovers. The landlord of the inn at Ayr, hung as hikers last seen there. The publican of the pub, the Bear, lynched by just a signature. And many more, their loved ones too, grieving when the mob charged through. Any hamlet near and where, bones were washed up from the mare. A reject in her own commune, mother saw no opportune. A lunacy saw naked stray, she off the cliff at Morrock Bay. Necessity uplifted me. I sold the abode and I hitched on carts to Edinburgh and education. I wrote reports on the renegade courts and of the missing gripping the nation. My psyche was scarred, street life was hard, so I turned a bard for my bread. Reams I filled with the streams of killed, I wrote in a broadsheet spread. I wrote in verse, for prose was worse, the crimes in rhymes were shorter. The Edinburgh Times bought up my work, then employed me a court reporter. My odes on the rogue soon ran to the rogue of regal recognition. All the travesty inked, I was goad to be linked to his majesty and audition. I entered his chamber, the wordsmith painter, as favoured maker macabre. In his innermost ring I had swung the swing to a patronage from a pauper. I feigned effect for the royal seat, to list all lives been lifted. Although my work now obsolete, I pen the deceit of the twisted. Heed, priest whore, desist your wail, shut up your awful yelling. It is almost dawn, and as last of the spawn you'll listen, for there's more needs telling. 'Tis of your kin that I'm steeped in sin, I played the gay laureate. 'Twas pride for my name that I suffered the shame, and rode the king's wicked chariot. So in Scotland's west, still more arrests, in the hamlets, towns and shanties, and the people fled or stayed in dread of the ghoul or the vigilantes. Tracts went sparse from mass clearance in reaction to the slaughter, and on it went the disappearance, with scores rent off every quarter. And all the prayers in all the kirks, and all the pens from all the clerks, writing up such vast rewards, and fighting men with sharpened swords in mustered crews, try they might, could not flush the phantom blight. A chain of plays I thus obtained from the tide of pain in the tyrant's reign, till a fortune shift in a winter's mist, love slain in fate arraign. "Stop calling me Belle," pleaded Claire, she said, as she sat on a colt from the fair. "Please stop, else after we're wed, that silly name I'll be known instead." Said Captain N of the Foot Regiment, "Your beauty it doth make my heart resonant." She reached to touch him, right close to me, as a cloaking fog rolled from the sea. Out from the violent, silent, smoky white, a violent croak that put to flight a mount, and then a pack of beasts materialized with screams, "Bean feasts!" A horde of 40 freaks came roaring, swarmed, then struck, and then got goring the horse that had sat Claire astride, and killed the colt and the would-be bride. N fought on as on they flooded, witnessed his betrothed get gutted, slashed his blade, banged both his gun. A sound of a drum, and the scum were gone. Merchants in numbers crossing the night spotted the officer in his fight, and rode to his aid to join the affray. The savages then simply melted away. Proof with N and his lost bride that the scourge of the land was but a monstrous tribe of killers skilled, but brutes who bled and could be killed. The captain rode to Holyrood, inside the palace in sombre mood, sought an audience with the king, and told him of the odious sting. The king was throned with Anne the Dane, and he well knew of witches' bane, for limping to the Firth of Forth, the Gideon hit from a storm-boiled north. His childish bride implied black magic, swore she spied a cursed pelagic. Back in Denmark repercussions found a slew of Satan's covens. Scotland also women burned, the mass trials was where he'd learned of sorcery his expertise, to write the demonologies. The Samson hag had howled a scorcher, confessed a verse whilst under torture, that Satan's foe upon this earth was James the Sixth, and soon the first. And so the king his ear was keen to hear of tell of Sawney Bean, requested his Castalian band, "Compose me ditties of the damned." Cast as hero in the title, routing evil by the Bible, a fictitious, righteous, homicidal, he checks the text for signs of libel. My story stirred him up a storm to arm his army in the morn, commanded N to navigate to where he'd come eradicate. His Highness led the holy force, 400 men and 40 horse, sniffer dogs to sniff the rot, 4 cannon and some cannon shot, and gunpowder to blow their plot. A friend was N as we trekked the glen, solace in our loss, but we were not wiser men as we thought they troops of moss. Some sung songs stomp in the prairie to calm the king when he got wary. Harassed from a past kidnap, he asked his cortege, "Falter back." The coast was hunt to Benign Head till dusk had set without a thread. Then a musky scent of dead was scented by a sniffer hound. The fiendish cave was finally found. 6 abreast with fixed bayonets, we marched into a mire. Shadow things gleamed harrowed scenes, born of brandished fire. Nerves were spent as dreams were bent in purple-circled gaze. Flambeau sticks played demon tricks on the walls of the garbled maze. James, who was by far a fool, halted by a sunken pool, and thus defended by the foss, said, "Strum, minstrels, before the cross." And as they stayed and played and prayed, I, N, and skittish men marched to fetid moor. A crab brigade held us at bay, for they had raised claw. To reeking ink we flinching inched, when a rat gang scampered rabid. Shooted cap swarmed storms of bats, and warned that we'd invaded. The stifled quiet after rifles fired cracked the cavity. Then eyes got burned as we turned and learned of racked depravity. We bumped about in sick and blunder, sick in mind and sick with chunder. Our souls were so torn asunder in the charnel pit of people plunder. 7 stacks of salted corpses, baskets of torsos, main courses, soup tureens of human beans, nibbled ears in pickled jars, eyeballs in an ornate vase, a store of sawn-off, gnawed-on arses. Seared in morbid awe we stood, a soldier leaked a lake of blood. Panic-stricken torches fell, then another's fatal yell. Rushed on the Goth with a rage of wrath, and chaos cleaved the ranks. A hatchet-heaving, crazed bemoth hewed a swathe in her flanks. She led a hate-filled hurricane, a heinous typhoon. It slammed into our barricades and ploughed through the platoon. 9 men died, 4 more would die, more knelt for mercy's pity. Thence came a clear-rung battle cry, which shored us up with gritty. Pro Liege at Liege, defend the Liege, aroused the rousing shout. The captain broke the siege to bend, the battle from a rout. Kindled privates raised to rally, muskets spat a leaden volley, vengeful swords pricked many more. En ripped on, the king, the law, till all that was defiant, the mammoth axe-welled matriarch and our mirrored triad giant. Sacrilege, none shall pass, defile his snoozed church. The mother's trine lurched to sign, a necro-oozing mass. Hails of slugs drilled 4 fat thugs, but on they fought on praying, swung sword and axe till shells collapsed, emptied with the spraying. Gunpowder booms saw sulphur fumes form layered waves of broom. A shadow loomed in hazy gloom, smoked out his basest tomb. The grog-soaked ogre, half hungover, eyed his empire's fall. Dead or caught, the air was fraught as he prowled with a dual maul. But ire was in the eye of En, his spouse assassin now he ken. His passion grew to fired glow, he steeled to pounce, to smite his foe. Sawney's daunting presence failed, crumbled, paled, he tumbled, nailed. His glowered glare blurred to stone, the bully beat, chained and owned. Unclean fiend, James preened behind a wall of armed ward, his clique of poets' notebooks primed for history's record. Force it kneel, may fierce it feel the justice of our Lord. Your soul's to pay on Judgment Day, today you'll bless your king. You'll beg me grace for this disgrace, so yield and kiss my ring. The ogre bridled, dangled guards, strode towards, spoke with barbs, fettered, held and half-blind drunk, still scared the king and sucked his spunk. Kneeling, yielding, kissing rings, no more talk of witless things, for we both kings and sires of mice, and are we not both mired in vice? I reap souls and rape a few, our souls also thy own taboo. I seen your mincing crew. There is a difference twixt us two, you're fret of me, not I of you. 'Twas at that moment, from the pall, infants from a horror school clamped his padded pants like leeches. The king released and soiled his breeches. He screamed a stream of cussing words, the likes of which I'd never heard. A cussed towel! His bowel the lighter, more an author than a fighter. As biting brats were beaten back, the king's facade began to crack. What before a codpiece itch exploded as a nervous glitch. He dropped his rude to rabbit bounce, howled in bandy-legged flounce, howls of haunts of headless mums, and cussed repents of sodding sons. Sawney and his hellish brood smirked in relish at the lewd, eccentric monarch on display. James, ashamed, vowed they would pay. 47 cannibals lugged out to morning's light. They mocked him, locked in manacles, jeered on in wounded plight. Jeering all the march duration, acting the king's defamation, ornery taunting, flaunting bilboes, in the swamps betwixt the enclose of Tolbooth's incarceration, James, citing rightful divination, and to avoid his abdication, ordered a mass mutilation. From the raucous thong were ripped their glottis tongues, and dogs were tipped. A slippy slope, thence I slipped. The family thrown in an oubliette, my stance seen as a sovereign threat, my expulsion out the august members, a week which saw my words as embers. Censors raided published places, papers pulped or burnt to ashes, cinders made of any cases of literature containing traces, Any hint of this affair, written or whispered, would ensnare.